All right, this is Chad with United Studio Tech, and we are here to talk about the UT Twin48. This is a microphone that has been a long time in development, and I'm really excited to finally talk about this microphone. This microphone has two origin stories, and both are true, and I'm going to tell you both of them. When we first started about the process of developing a 47 style microphone, a tube microphone, there was a lot of discussion with our partners and distributors, and it was mentioned that there's a lot of 47s out there, and that in fact we already have a 47, and that we should do the 48. And much like with our UT Twin87, my response to that was, we'll do the 48 if we can actually do it. And by that, I meant reproducing the distinct electrical characteristics of the original 48 microphone as opposed to the 47. And that leads me to the other origin story. For about a decade now, as a hobby, I have built handmade reproductions of some of the classic microphones, from the golden age of recording. And one thing that has happened over the years that surprised me a lot is that I would have people request a U48 reproduction instead of a 47. And I would ask why they needed that, if they were doing Bloomline recording or some special stereo recording technique where they needed the figure 8 pattern. And a lot of times people would tell me, no, we like the sound of the 48 better. And that didn't make sense to me, because I was under the impression that in cardioid mode, both of those circuits would sound the same. It wasn't until one day I had actually built a reproduction of a 47 and a 48, and I was able to put them side by side and decided to give them a listening test, and to discover to my surprise that there is a difference. There is an audible difference. And then I had to go about figuring out why that was. And that took a while. The differences are very subtle, but they are audible. It boils down to the fact that both of those microphones derive their cardioid pattern using a different technique. On a 47, the rear diaphragm is physically disconnected. On a U48, the rear diaphragm is polarized. It still has 60 volts going to it. And that changes the characteristic of that cardioid response. It closes it in a little bit. It sounds a little more intimate. And also because there are a few more components in a 48, the polarization voltage is pulled down just a little bit, making the mic a little less sensitive. This acts as a 3 or 4 dB pad, but it also takes away a little bit maybe of the top luster and makes it sound a little more warm. These are subtleties on a severe order of magnitude. They're not things that I think you would be able to hear unless you were able to do a side-by-side comparison. But with the UT Twin48, you can actually do that. I think this is the first time that we've been able to have a microphone where both of those circuits are at your disposal, and you can actually audition the differences and decide which one you need. You can audition the 47 in cardioid, the 48 in cardioid. It has the 48's figure 8 response. It has the 47's omni response. So 4 patterns in total in one microphone. And we feel it's the best of both worlds. You don't have to decide whether you need a U48 or a U47 for your microphone locker. With the UT Twin48, you can have both. I'd like to talk a little bit about what's inside of the UT Twin48. So the development of this microphone has been an ongoing process that goes almost all the way back to about 2016. For the longest time, I have wanted to be able to make a 47 style microphone using only contemporary components that are readily available, because I realize that it doesn't really serve anyone to make a microphone that uses exotic esoteric tubes, paper and oil capacitors, other vintage components that are going to fail and that you'll have a lot of trouble replacing. That being said, there is a lot of magic to some of those old ingredients, and it has been really, really challenging to find contemporary components that could come together in a way that would give me that sound that I'm looking for. We spent years auditioning capacitors from more manufacturers than I would have even known existed. And we spent years fine-tuning the transformer to get as close as we could to the original BV8 design. Tube selection as well. We really struggled to find a modern tube that could give us the sound that we wanted. It's much easier to make a 47 style mic using vintage tubes. Obviously, the original steel tube, the VF14, is long gone, but there are close relatives to that tube that some people have used. But these are all in short supply, and when you have a tube that's 60, 70 years old, reliability is an issue. And again, it doesn't serve anyone to make a microphone that you're going to have to discontinue because something became unavailable. We finally settled on the EF86 pentode. The EF86 is, in a way, it's the very last living descendant of the original pentode that the 47 style mic was designed around. It's the only pentode that is still in production today. And even though we are using a vintage new old stock EF86 pentode in this microphone, it can be serviced by putting in a modern current production EF86 pentode, and you would be just fine. So the mic really is future-proofed. It's a 47 that exists independent of vintage, rare, and out-of-production parts, that is user-serviceable for the foreseeable future, essentially for the lifetime of the user. And I think that adds a lot of value to it. It's a 47 style mic in your locker that you don't have to handle with kit gloves and be afraid that one day it's going to stop working and that you'll either lose it or you'll have to shell out a fortune to have it restored. This microphone should last a lifetime and is easily maintained. I want to talk a little bit about performance and reliability on the UT Twin48 as well. We know now that with digital recording and modern recording techniques, we can achieve some pretty amazing signal-to-noise ratios, some extremely clean and dynamic recording. And it might be argued that something like a tube microphone is no longer has a place in that world. We understand that people have high standards today, and we wanted to make sure that this microphone did not disappoint, that it not only sounded musical and rich and full, but it would also have extremely low noise, extremely low microphonics, low distortion, good headroom. We did everything we could to ensure that this microphone holds up to some of your cleanest and quietest solid-state condenser microphones, which was not an easy task. Everything had to be scrutinized. You had to have a very clean circuit. You have to have really good quality components, really good quality capacitors. We're using custom wound JB film capacitors. We're using custom made polystyrene capacitors. We're using many resistors that are custom made for us by PRP, which, if you're not familiar, PRP is the last US manufacturer of resistors, and they make thin film resistors that are specifically audio grade. Aside from that, they're most known for making resistors used by NASA, such as for the Mars rover and satellites and other very critical applications. The reason that they are known for making those types of resistors is because when you're doing aerospace or you're doing something that goes into space, you really cannot have anything that produces noise. These resistors basically have a noise level that approaches the physical limit. They only have what's called the thermal radiative noise, which is just the noise that's required by physics converting electricity into heat. Other than that, none. And so every little bit helps. And we've done everything we could to block RF interference, to block EMI, to make it to where this microphone does not have any anomalous behavior, is not picking up anything that it should not be picking up, and is not putting noise into your signal. It should perform as reliably, cleanly, solidly as most solid-state condenser microphones, if not better. I'd like to talk a little bit about the transformer that's in the UT Twin48. We are using a true BV8 transformer. It's a large format transformer. It's custom wound for us in the United States, just for United, and it is made true to the original specifications. It's one of the things that I feel like if you're going to do a 47 or 48 style microphone that you cannot skimp on, and we definitely did not with this microphone. I'd like to go over a few things on the power supply for the UT Twin48. This rugged power supply was designed to be maintenance-free and to be incredibly durable. As you can see, the controls are recessed on the front as well as the back. Not that we want this power supply to fall or take any damage, but if it did, you would more than likely be unharmed as the controls are or safely within this envelope. The UT Twin48 power supply is a truly discrete supply. It never requires calibration. One of the things that you notice with many of the more high-end microphones is that the power supplies do require some calibration from time to time. We really didn't want you to have to do that. We worked with a company in the United States to make a custom discrete regulator that regulates filament voltage, and the high voltage rail is also discrete and is Zener diode regulated so that nothing has to be adjusted. It's going to have a steady output of the correct voltages you need no matter what. It will work in any territory and never requires any maintenance.